Hi there, welcome back to Betty Boop. Today we're reading chapter 3. There's a few pages missing in this chapter, but it'll be okay. We can understand what's happening. I'm so glad you joined me today. The Town Musicians, Chapter 3. The wicked queen swore she would kill her stepdaughter if she caught her. So Snow White decided that it would be wiser to spend the night in the woods. And as she was wandering unhappily along the darkening road toward the forest, she came upon a donkey, which was going the same way. Its head was hanging down, and it looked as dejected as she did.
"What is the trouble, old fellow?"
The poor donkey. So they walked on in silence, until a little further on they found a dog lying by the side of the road, panting, as if he had run a long way.
"Now, Bimbo, what are you so out of breath about?"
asked the donkey, who knew the hound quite well.
"Oh dear,"
said Bimbo, sitting up and holding his head in his paws.
"Now I am old, and I get weaker every day and can do no good in the hunt. So, as my master was going to have me killed, I made my escape. But now, how am I to gain a living?"
"I will tell you what,"
said the donkey.
"I'm going to Bremen to become a town musician. You may as well go with me and take up music too. I can play the lute and you can beat the drum while Snow White can dance."
The dog consented, and they walked on together. It was not long before they came to a cat sitting in the road, looking as dismal as 3 wet days.
"Now then, what's the matter with you?"
asked the donkey.
"I should like to know who would be cheerful when his neck is in danger,"
answered the cat.
"Now that I am old, my teeth are getting blunt, and I would rather sit by the oven and purr than run about after mice. My mistress wanted to drown me, so I took myself off, but I do not know what is to become of me."
And great teardrops ran down the cat's whiskers.
"Go with us to Bremen," said the donkey, "and become town musician. You should understand serenading."
The cat thought well of the idea and went with them accordingly. After that, the 4 travelers passed by a yard where a cock was perched on the gate, crowing with all his might.
"Your cries are enough to pierce bone and marrow,"
said Snow White, covering her pretty ears.
"What is the matter?"
"Company's coming on Sunday morning, and the mistress has told the cook that I must be made into soup," fluttered the rooster. "This evening my neck is to be wrung, so I'm crowing with all my might while I can." "You had much better go with us, Chanticleer," said the donkey. "We are going to Bremen. You have a powerful voice, and when we are all performing together, it will be a very good effect."
So the cock consented, and they went on, all 5 together. But Bremen was too far off to be reached in one evening, so they determined to pass the night in the wood. The donkey and the dog lay down under a large tree, with Snow White between them, so that she would not get cold. The cat got up among the branches, and the rooster flew up to the top, as that was the safest place for him. Before he went to sleep, he looked all around him, to the 4 points of the compass, and perceived a little light shining in the distance. He called out to his companions that there must be a house not far off.
"We had better get up and go there then, for these are uncomfortable quarters,"
said the donkey. The dog began to think a few bones not quite bare would do him good. And as for Snow White, she decided that sleeping under the stars wasn't as romantic as it sounded.
Let's go.
And they all set off in the direction of the light. It grew larger and brighter, until, at last, it led them to a robber's house, all lighted up. The donkey, being the biggest, went up to the window and looked in.
Well, what do you see?
Asked Snow White, doing her best by standing on tiptoe to peek over the sill.
"What do I see?"
Answered the donkey.
"There is a table set out with splendid eatables and drinkables, and robbers sitting at it and making themselves very comfortable. That would just suit us," said the cock.
Yes, indeed. I wish we were there. Oh,
sighed Snow White, who was feeling weak with hunger. Then they consulted together how it should be managed so as to get the robbers out of the house, and at last they hit on a plan. The donkey was to place his 4 feet on the windowsill. The dog was to get on the donkey's back, the cat on top of the dog. The cock was to fly up and perch on the cat's head, and Snow White was to hang on to the donkey's tail. When that was done, at a given signal, they all began to perform their music. Donkey brayed, the dog barked, the cat mewed, the cock crowed, and Snow White screamed. Then they burst through the room, breaking all the panes of glass. The robbers fled at the dreadful sound. They thought it was some goblin and ran into the woods in terror. Then the 5 companions sat down to the table, made free with the remains of the meal, and feasted as if they had been hungry for a month. And when they had finished, they put out the lights, and each sought out a sleeping place to suit his nature and habits. The donkey laid down just outside the front door, the dog behind the door, the cat on the hearth by the warm ashes. The cock settled himself in the chicken house, and Snow White curled up in the big easy chair, which stood in the chimney corner. And as they were all tired with their long journey, they soon fell fast asleep. When midnight drew near, and the robbers from far off saw that no light was burning, and that everything appeared quiet, their captain said to them that he thought they should run away without reason, and told one of them to go and find out what had been wrong. So one of them went and found everything quite silent. He went into the kitchen to strike a light, and, taking the glowing, fiery eyes of the cat for burning coals, he held a match to them in order to kindle it. But the cat, not seeing the joke, flew into his face, spitting and scratching. Then he cried out in terror and ran to get out of the back door, but the dog, which was lying there, ran at him and bit his leg. And as he was rushing through the yard, the donkey struck out and gave him a great kick with his hind foot. And the rooster, which had been awakened by the noise, cried out. Then the robber got back as well as he could to his captain and said,
In that house, there's an awful witch. I felt her breath and her long nails in my face. And by the door, there stands a man who stabbed me in the leg with a knife. And in the yard there lies a black specter who beat me with his wooden club. And above there sits a policeman who cried, "Bring that rogue here." And so I ran away from the place as fast as I could. Strangely enough, Snow White did not wake up during all this commotion. In the morning, her 4 animal friends informed her that they had decided that they were so well off at the robber's house that they would not go to Bremen after all. They invited her to stay with them, but she answered that by this time her stepmother's anger had probably cooled and that she must go home that day to greet her father, the king, who was coming home from the wars. Whereat the 4 animals were very sad, for they had heard Snow White's story and were worried about her. So they ordered Bimbo, the dog, to leave the warm fireside and escort the girl home, and never to leave her thereafter, as long as they both should live. That's the end of chapter 3. I hope you'll join me next time for chapter 4.
The queer little dwarfs.
Thank you for joining me today.
She can win you with a wing. Ain't she cute? Sweet Patty.
We'll see you next time.